Little Jimmy would rather be disciplined for breaking that glass and get sent to his room or a timeout or a little swat on the behind than have to hear you argue. That should speak volumes to you. I would rather get in trouble than to see my mom and dad fight like that. I think it's worth pointing out that all marriage therapy is actually family therapy. So when couples come in, they're so focused on themselves, right? They're in crisis, their relationship is under stress, and so this is the way they see it. A and B, right? Husband and wife. So A affects B and B affects A. That's linear causality, all right? But as marriage and family therapists, we see the family as a system where everything is interconnected. So that's called circular causality. So yes, A and B affect one another, but also A affects C and D affects E and so on. So you have the family, the circle, and all the members of that family affect one another. All right. So that's really important to remember. So when you call, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to assess your situation and see what level of crisis that you're in. I want to know about how bad is the fighting? Is there physical violence? Is there, verbal abuse? Are you throwing things, hitting one another? And then I want to know if there's kids in the house, all right? Because I want to assess the damage not only in their relationship, but in the family as a whole, all right? And so that brings us to our topic, why we need to be careful about how we fight in front of our kids. So the developmental years of a kid is between 3 up to 3 is the most critical, and then from 3 to 7 is another critical stage. So they're forming their identity, and they're getting their attachment style, and they're learning about the world around them. So babies, especially, when you see them spill things and tear things and stick stuff in their mouth and knock on things, they're not trying to be rude or mischievous. They're doing little mini experiments. They're learning about the world around them. And this translates even into how they interact with other people. They're trying to learn about relationships, and especially with their parents. So I think about a blind person, and they compensate by better hearing, better sense of taste and touch, and all these different things to make up for that loss that they have. So babies have a loss in that they don't understand words, but they're very intuitive and they're very sensitive to tones. They're pre-wired to understand what a nurturing tone is. And then when they don't get that nurturing tone and they don't get that soft touch, then they begin to develop those things that we talked about. They begin to develop anxiety, depression. Those are some of the ramifications of that fighting that it can cause in your children. The other thing that happens when you're fighting in front of your kids, especially if it's really intense, is the older ones especially will begin to act out. So this could be for a few reasons. One is they're simply modeling the behavior that's been taught to them. So if mom and dad are fighting back and forth, that's the communication style that they're learning. They think that that's normal. Then they go to school and they talk to others like that. Also, and these can work in conjunction, they will act out at home in an attempt to create a diversion. So let's say mom and dad are in the living room and Jimmy's in the kitchen and he breaks a glass. All right. It's not that he's trying to cause trouble, although he is in a sense, for the sake of causing trouble. He knows that if I can create a big enough diversion, it will keep mom and dad from fighting, and then they'll have to concentrate on me. Now think about that. Little Jimmy would rather be disciplined for breaking that glass and get sent to his room or a timeout or a little swat on the behind than have to hear you argue. That should speak volumes to you. I would rather get in trouble than to see my mom and dad fight like that. All right. So the problem that they cause is actually the solution for them. All right. I know I can cause this problem, break the glass, and it will solve the problem of mom and dad fighting. So another thing that you might see is children that have been are older and they haven't wet the bed in a while, and now y'all are fighting and there's intensity in the house. They might start wetting the bed again. All right. In an unconscious way to divert you from your fighting onto them. The other thing that can happen is they withdraw. So a lot of times I'll be having these conversations with mom and dad. All right, tell me what it's like in your house. Well, the kids are in the room when we fight. Okay, yeah, and they might be in there playing, but it's not because they're bored or you're not giving them attention. It's because they're withdrawing. They don't want to be around the fighting. Okay, so you have to think about that. They're in their room playing, but they're thinking, if mom and dad talk to each other like that, they're going to talk to me like that, and I don't want to be around that. I don't want to be spoke to like that. Or the other thing is they're thinking about, what did I do? I must have been a bad kid. I didn't make my bed. Or like I said, I wasn't obedient, or, I let the dog out when I should have and he got out, or, it could be anything. They blame themselves because, and then they get this complex, I need to be better, and they put all this pressure on themselves to fix your relationship. All right. Now, this all comes back to the circular thing and the circular, the cause and effect. Now, they're raised in this environment and they learn how to do relationships. This carries over into the adult relationships. Now, they're acting like dad acted towards mom, and now he's acting that way towards his wife. And this can be generational. I always go back to Grandma and Grandpa. How are they? And then how is your mom and dad? Now, what are the similarities? Are you seeing that? All right. So at some point, there has to be a disruption in that cycle. That's all change is. It's a disruption in the cycle. You have to learn to do things differently. So this is just part one of the video. Part two, I'm going to talk about the things that you can do to help minimize the damage in your house when y'all are arguing. Okay. So the goal is to argue in a way where you're not damaging the kids, all right? Because I've thought about this. When my son gets married, I want to be able to look his new wife in the eye and say, you got a good man. He's going to treat you right. He's going to provide for you, and he's going to care for you, and he's going to respect you. And the reason I can say that with confidence is because that's what I've modeled in front of him. My son's going to know how to be a good husband because he saw me be a good husband to my wife. My son's going to know how to be a good father because I modeled that in front of him. I treated him with respect, and I was fair to him and his little sister. So now he knows how to be a dad. He knows how to be a hard worker and has a work ethic because he saw me, run my practice and get a PhD and all these different things. So that's important. What we model in front of our kids is so important. Another thing that I want to mention really quick is, it takes effort to do that, especially in the early years. All right, you're going to have to be conscious about how you do things and deliberate and set up rules and have boundaries and all those things, and instill the values, instill the morals, instill a code into them so that when they become teenagers, they're not easily persuaded by their peers, that they have a foundation and they're anchored to something and they can say, no, that's not what I believe. And they can't be swayed. They go to college. They have a professor that's teaching something that goes against their morals or values. They can say, no, I don't agree with that, instead of being swayed by everything. All right. This creates a person of integrity. All right. So I know I'm kind of going from not fighting with your kids into like changing the world and making these people grow up to be, productive members of society and things like that. But that's, if you trace it, that's where it leads. And that's what we want. And ultimately, our community is healthier for it. All right. So remember, I want you to go look at part 2 of this video, and I'm going to give you some strategies about how you can argue at home and keep your kids safe. So if you're struggling with this and you need help, give me a call, shoot me an email. I'd love to talk to you about it. But until then, remember this: stronger relationships start here.